Shalom and welcome to this special edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, bringing you the Respect Hour as we do on the first Thursday of every month at 11 o'clock Central Time with the author of 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage and the creator of the Respect Dear Nina Roesner. During an era where many marriages are marked by conflict, even within the church, couples get a steady stream of messages like seek your own happiness or life is too short to live in an unhappy marriage. Some couples give up the fight only to find a next relationship is no different than the one they left. Our next guest says this unending cycle is not only wearisome, it's physically, emotionally, financially, or spiritually exhausting. Many of the conflicts in relationships will begin with misunderstanding and are based on lies, she explains. Others, she says, are based on misguided expectations about roles and responsibilities within the marriage. In her new book, 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage, Nina Roesner explains the differences between a feminist version or doing marriage and what she calls a complementarian approach. She offers a third idea, a holitarian approach. The Bible teaches that women are equal to men. Neither gender is better or less than the other. There are differences between the genders, differences between people, and therefore differences between marriages. Nina Roesner is the executive director of Greater Impact Ministries, a Christian training organization in Cincinnati, Ohio. Nina has more than 20 years in the communications and training industry and has coached executives, managers, individuals, wives, church staffs, and pastors around the country. As a professional speaker for Women's Group and the developers of Daughters of Sarah and the Respect Dare, she's seen hundreds of marriages positively impacted by the understanding and application of the biblical concept of respect. She writes consistently about family life and our identity in Christ on her blog, and she's been married to her husband Jim since 1991, and they have 3 children together. Here to host the Respect Hour on this first Thursday of every month is the author of 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage, The Respect Dare, and Daughters of Sarah, our good friend Nina Roesner. Nina, great to see you, and just realized I didn't see you the month we were gone to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great to be back.
Good to have you back. And what is new in the Roesner family?
We're just trying to enjoy the summer. My son and his wife, they're both 23. They got goats. They have a little farm, and they got goats. So we have 3 goat grandbabies, which is weird, and we don't talk about it. So, but that's it.
Your kids have kids.
Yeah, isn't that funny? But I'm bummed.
So, and you don't talk about them. So why are the kids the taboo subject?
Well, it's not really taboo, but my husband and I are at the age where our youngest is going to be a senior in high school, and so we don't have grandkids yet from the marriage, and we're looking forward to that day. Certainly not in a hurry for it. But there's always a joke when my son and his wife get a pet. And so this is the latest joke, is that we have grandkids. Then I'm like, okay, I'm not going to show anybody any photos. I'm not going to take any pictures. It's just a little bit amusing.
Well, so. It is, especially since my experience of just having my daughter give birth to my first granddaughter. She's made it clear this will be my only granddaughter. She didn't like pregnancy. But Mila was born last Monday and has been in the NICU unit since she was born, and her lungs are now developed to the point where she is hopefully going to be released tomorrow. And I have my home set up where I have a nursery now that I had built out for her. And because of his work, he's a boat captain, he's out at sea a lot. She's going to come spend a week a month with me so I can have the kind of bonding relationship with my granddaughter that I have with my daughter. So I'm very excited about that.
That's wonderful.
As you look at this whole concept of the respect there, and how it's taken on a full life, how many families you've interacted with, how many misunderstand the concept of respect. We talked the last time about the weight, the kavod, the weight of a person's position being worthy of honor and respect,
Yeah.
which is interchangeable in the New Testament. We now come to an area that is greatly disturbing, and that is, and I'm not sure when it really came up on the radar. It probably was a model of the 50s. It just didn't have a name.
Right.
There was this post-war generation where the man was the provider, protector, and felt a certain amount of entitlement. The mother, the wife, stayed at home, and there was a certain amount of expectation that she would rear the children, prepare the meals, and run the household. And there were quite defined roles, very different, unequal roles, and almost a performance standard that, if it wasn't met, was dealt with in various ways, from the extreme way, which was physical abuse, to the equally as destructive verbal abuse, and then there was the shunning, and then there were the affairs and all those other things, and then all of a sudden you wind up with very bad parenting examples. I think that my generation has some of the worst parenting examples of all time. It was the don't do as I do, do as I say, the 3 martini lunches, the different kind of living, and we became a generation that didn't really have a complete understanding, a complete grasp of wholeness, unless you were really steeped in the Bible, unless you were in a Christian home, Christian community, which was not the majority. The majority in the 50s were Catholic. The denominational Christianity, sure, the Reformers came along a lot before that, but the Catholic Church was the power center in all the major cities. I mean, there was the power center in Pittsburgh. It was the power center in Cincinnati. All of the Midwestern cities, in the eastern cities, it was the power center of New York City, of Philadelphia. So we got some real bad models and some real bad examples, and we've tried to correct those, come to a level of transparency as you promote, and the respect there, and looking to shift the balance to become an equality and how we speak to each other. But then there's this phenomenon of narcissism, of this. It's kind of like a Copernican kind of psychology and spirituality that says that I am the center of the universe. Everything revolves around me, and even the Bible says that I am the authority. I am to subdue the earth. You can't come to me with scripture to counter this new attitude of the lordship of the man. He should love his wife like Christ loved the church, and he was the head. And so there's this new authority in Luke 10:19. I give you the authority. And so the scales have tipped to this extreme that is so destructive, so counter Scripture, so counter the sweet definition of love given to us in the Bible and the example of Jesus, that it's become pervasive. It is in every practitioner I talk to, it is becoming the disorder du jour.
Yeah. It is, and it's affecting families in a hugely negative way. Now, I have a cell phone here. I don't take selfies with it. I did take a picture of my family with me at the baseball game last weekend, but the social media's influence here can't be ignored either. We're all about here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm eating, here's my new haircut, here's my everything. And so our culture's evolved into being other centered, to being self centered. And then on top of that, we've created a space where happiness is the goal when you're raising kids. And so instead of actually parenting and there being consequences, we're all about our kids feeling good and all of that. And I say that out loud and it sounds like, well, what's the problem with that? What's wrong with my kids being happy? Everybody wants that, right? But the truth is that if we don't allow them to struggle in the nows that they're in when they're younger, life will eat them for lunch. And so we're to walk with and not do for. And if there was more of that, we'd have fewer safe zones because people would be strong enough to handle the cafeteria making a food that, could potentially offend them. Now, people are on the defensive, they're looking for offense, and it's because we're not grown up. And that's where narcissism comes from, is the lack of maturity in an individual. And we're seeing that become rampant. It's really sad.
So it's really, in its most basic form, these are people that don't share and don't play well with others.
Yes, and it even goes beyond that. If you meet the criteria for the narcissistic personality disorder in the DSM-5, which is the book all the psychologists use to say, okay, here's your number, here's your thing, you can turn this into your insurance, here's your label. If you meet those, it's not even that you can't play well with others. You don't even know there's others. That's how bad this can be. That everything is so much about you that you're not even aware that there's other people around you that your behavior impacts. And so it's one thing when you have a 2-year-old doing that, and quite another when you have an adult.
So for the purposes of our program and what we've done with the respect there, we've kind of focused in on marriage and the marital relationship between husband and wife and that dynamic. Mm-hmm. And so there's a couple of questions that we kind of need to figure out is, are there warning signals in the dating period that we should be looking for that would indicate that the person is a narcissist, or are they so adept at it that they can manipulate their way around it to disguise it so that it doesn't appear? Self-admittedly, 15 years married to a narcissist. I didn't know what one was until my daughter, after I was betrayed and divorced, said to me, well, didn't you know she was a narcissist? And I said, I don't know what that means. I don't know what a narcissist is. Yeah. And she began to explain to me, and I said, oh, well, that explains this and that explains that. I mean, on the third day of the marriage, the wedding ring was thrown at me. Mm. So I knew 3 days into it there was something wrong with this, but yeah. I was a brand new believer. Yeah. And so I didn't have what I thought were biblical grounds, so I knew that if this is what it was going to look like, this was not a happy future. And it wasn't until the actual act of betrayal took place 15 years later that I did have biblical grounds, but in counseling found out that there was marital abandonment long before the actual betrayal that anybody in ministry would have supported. I was completely clueless. I had no idea that this was going on around me. I was serving the Lord. I was doing and so I was clueless to the fact that I was an archer, but and plenty of arrows to fire to hit the target, but the target always moved. So I never hit a target in 15 years. I never hit a target.
And that's not your fault.
Correct.
Yeah. And I'm really, gosh, it breaks my heart that you went through all of that. That is an awful experience. And people that are involved in relationships with people that are severely narcissistic, like you're describing, it is damaging. It hurts our soul. It kills our spirit. And thank God for God, because a lot of the women, I have a class online called Strength and Dignity, and that's the environment a lot of these women come from, is that they're dealing with such selfish behavior, and they've lost themselves in it. It's like their desires, their wants don't even exist. And it's not about standing up and saying, here's my rights, hear me roar. But it's more about finding who we are again, and then learning how to interact with that person. Because all these women are Christian, and they want to save their marriage. They want to stay married. And it's not easy. It's awful, and it's brutally painful. And for the people that are not married yet, or have kids that are looking at getting married, one of the key red flags is empathy. Does this person have empathy? Do they admit when they make a mistake? That's another key. If they are fine with, yeah, you're right, I hurt your feelings, I shouldn't have done that, I'm so sorry, and there's true grief there. There's compassion, there's empathy, there's I hurt somebody else. They are self-aware enough that they can see their impact on other people. When you have severe narcissism, it's like everybody's here to serve me. And you're really interacting with a person that has the relational maturity of an 18-month-old to 2. Because this is the place where the only thing that exists is them. Mother dotes on them, their cries are answered, boom, boom, boom. We give birth to narcissists. Everybody in the universe is a narcissist when they're born, right? I cry, people answer, I'm in control, and it's supposed to be like that. I mean, hello, nothing wrong with that. But around age 2, we're supposed to start seeing other people in the picture. And if mom and dad continue doting at the extreme level that they have been, and I'm not saying abuse your child and let them figure out, how to cross the street on their own. I'm not saying that, but there's a shift that needs to happen where we start showing them that there's other people in the world. And we have to avoid shaming our child, because when we shame them, we teach them I'm only good if I perform. And so that in and of itself is enough to start making that personality that you talked about that can manipulate others show up. So we want to have authentic, real relationships with our kids, with the people we married. And we have to be prepared if we're in a relationship with a narcissist and we start, and this is what happens to my people in my class, when they start figuring out themselves and having boundaries, then the narcissist starts having a problem. And so then you have the separation anxiety that the 2-year-old has when you drop them off at Sunday school. That shows up in your adult, and they become controlling and they don't know what's going on. And so you deal with a lot more conflict, and it's hard. It is really, really hard. And some marriages don't make it through that because it is really hard.
I'm looking at the list of DSM, I guess it's 4, that for an official diagnosis, it requires the individual exhibit 5 of the 9 symptoms that are listed here. 1 has a grandiose self of self-importance, exaggerates achievements and talents, expects to be recognized as superior without commensurate achievements. 2 is preoccupied with fantasies of unlimited success, power, brilliance, beauty, or ideal love. So, just those 2 alone talk about a not the real world,
right.
Not the heavenly minded, earthly bound kind of approach that we take to our spiritual walk, where I keep my eyes on the prize, but I know that as a human, he's the creator, I'm the creation. I understand the dynamic role between us. It says, believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by, or should only associate with other special or high status people or institutions. And so you are automatic on the receiving end of this. You are automatically not one.
Right.
You could be greatly accomplished, but you're just not enough. You're not.
Right.
And if you were the exact same level as somebody they did associate with, they would find and identify the why you're not, or the target would move. I always felt it was a shell game. I always thought that no matter what, I could never guess what ball it was under, and came to find out that there was never a ball. There were just moving cups. Requires excessive admiration, has a very strong sense of entitlement, unreasonable expectations of especially favorable treatment or automatic compliance with his or her expectations, is exploitative of others, takes advantage to achieve their own ends. They lack empathy. They're unwilling to recognize or identify with the feeling and needs of others. Although I've seen it where it is a manipulative empathy. It is the expression of empathy, but it is only the spider's web to entrap the person, because you've now crossed over into this area of trust, and now they trust you. Now you can control them because you've now broken down the barrier. The boundary's been destroyed. Now they're in your circle. Is often envious of others, or believes that others are envious of them, and they regularly show arrogant, haughty behaviors or attitudes. I wish I could capture the facial expressions of the glaring, and when nobody is looking, the side glance of just disdain, and so many people I've talked to over the years after going to counseling and starting with my own daughter, who said to me, you need to wake up. You were a great dad. You were a great father. You did everything you could. You were a great husband. You did everything you possibly could. You could never been right. There was just no way for you to ever hit the target. It could never be big enough. Could never be. There's just, even if it was, here's 10 things that must be done. If you did all 10 of them exactly as instructed, the list would have changed, and there was just nothing you could do about it. And it's for a man, it is, and especially as a new believer, which my model was the scriptures. It wasn't. I had spiritually divorced myself from the life I lived. Therefore, any conduct in marriage or relationships that I had exhibited or seen was now nullified, and I had a new foundational truth that I was trying to emulate. This was the Boaz. This was the generous, the one who had time to listen, to be patient, to be kind, to not be easily angered. Well, that wasn't me before I came to faith, and I didn't come to faith till 4 years old. So I knew exactly what the opposite, and I figured if I just do the opposite of what I used to do, I'm a whole lot better off. I'm much closer to this model than I am the old one. But I can't imagine, even with what I went through, what it's like for the spouse of a narcissistic husband who already wields power and authority because of his provider, protector makeup.
Yep.
Adding all that to it is a recipe for just incredible abuse. And degrading as disrespectful. You created the Respect Dare, and the Respect Dare was addressed to women in how to turn the marriage around and save it, and what you can do, as opposed to looking to what the other can do. I think that it's important that we approach this the same way, that we take a look at what things we can do if we are to try to help or try to stay married to a narcissist.
Yep.
We're talking with Nina Roesner, host of this Respect Hour, the creator of the Respect Dare, Daughters of Sarah, and her newest book, 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage, a Respect Dare journey for wives. Such practical, such incredible insight into what really drives people to respond. It almost sounds a little superficial, but everybody has a currency. Everybody has something that motivates them. My dog has a currency, belly rubs. She knows that if she does exactly what I ask her to do, that at the end of that's going to be a long belly rub, and she's just going to be as happy as she can be. And so she'll do everything she knows. She'll go out when I tell her to go out, do what she has to do, eat, literally eats on command, and because she knows that the belly rub's going to come. Some will do it for treats. But even our children have currency. Even we have currency. And I think Dr. Gary Chapman says, he calls it the love languages. That's strictly your currency. That's what motivates. So is there a currency that we can identify for a narcissist that can actually fill some of the emptiness and the needs that they have? And that's what we'll explore with Nina Roesner when we come back from break. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Not everything that makes the headlines has biblical importance, but many events that happen around the world do, and you never hear about them. Igniting a Nation is pleased to teach Revealing Prophecy every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. at the Marriott 280 in Birmingham. We will cover worldwide events and insider information that will connect the dots of what's happening around the world with biblical prophecy. If you happen to miss a class, we'll televise each week's class at 10 o'clock Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our social media outlets. Copies of the teachings will also be available to purchase on our website at www.ignitinganation.com. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting a Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitinganation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth, from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Messianic Rabbi, Eric Walker, and as we do on this first Thursday of every month at the 11 o'clock hour, we're talking with Nita Roesner during the Respect Dare, the Respect Hour. She is the creator of the Respect Dare and new book, 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage, A Respect Dare Journey for Wives. Nita Roesner, welcome back to Revealing the Truth.
I'm so glad to be here. This is a hot topic.
Hot topic. So I come to the realization I'm married to a narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
And I love my spouse.
Yep.
The things that attracted me to them in the beginning, I'm still attracted to.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments when they interact with the kids in a special way. There's moments when they step up and they do the extraordinary, which kind of almost erases all of the other things. And so we focus on this chart of accomplishments that mask all these other problems. But the day-to-day is really quite horrible.
Yeah.
So how do we navigate marriage to a narcissist and redefine the relationship so that there can be at least some semblance of a healthy marriage?
So there's very few ways to get them to go get help themselves. So we have to stay focused on what we can do. So the question's perfect. What do we do? And we have to have a few things that we don't do. And the first one is we have to stop lying, because they will get the question, is everything okay? Sure, yeah, when it's not, when it's clearly not. And we lie about our feelings in response to them by not saying anything. And so that is just fundamentally one of the things that people do in a relationship when it's not reciprocal, is they lie. Now, there's a difference between lying and thinking, you know what, I'm taking that personally. There's probably something in here in me that needs to be worked through. I'm going to overlook that insult and take this to God and work through it. If it bothers me tomorrow, I'll talk to him about it. But so that's different. If you're in a situation where your relationship is not reciprocal, meaning if you're giving the positive words and you're doing for the other person and they're taking and taking and taking and they're not giving back, then that's where we need to take a hard look at ourselves and go, okay, I might be a person that doesn't have any boundaries. I may not be respecting myself. And here's the deal with that. Unfortunately, unless we respect ourselves, unless we love ourselves, and that is biblical, to love God, love others as we love ourselves, that assumes that we do, then we're not deemed worthy of respect from the other person. We think we're serving and we think we're loving and we're going the extra mile and laying down self and dying to self and all these things. And really what we're doing is mothering or parenting in a really unhealthy way, as if we had a child that was less than 2 years old. And so instead of creating an environment where we coddle and we pamper and we walk on eggshells to avoid the conflicts, we need to stop lying and realize that our inability to speak up and to lovingly say to this person, I really care a lot about you and what you feel about me and our relationship. When you cut me off at dinner harshly and contradicted what I said in front of the kids, I felt disrespected, and I'm not sure we're modeling the right thing there. So that's going to be hard to say. And one of the things you do with a narcissist, and we asked this before the break, is there something you can do to fill them up? And the answer is no. They need narcissistic supply, is what it's called. Give me praise, give me all the stuff, I'm the center of the universe. But it's a never-ending bottomless pit, because what most people don't realize is we're not dealing with people that are wildly arrogant in terms of confidence. We're dealing with people that are wildly damaged. They're broken and they're hurting. These are really, really wounded people. And so their reactions to the world around them are going to be, I'm going to take every little thing personally, and then I'm going to fight back. I'm going to just shoot right back and defend myself. That's super immature behavior. So what do we do with that? Well, we start by taking care of ourselves, because this is not a short haul if we want to have our marriage and continue. And we have to recognize, we have to lay down the myth that Christendom, if I'm a Christian, if I follow Christ, that I'm nice. Now, I'm not saying be unkind. We are supposed to be gentle, but we're also supposed to tell the truth. And we're supposed to be good, not nice. Nice is not in the Bible. So there's a difference there. And I am not, think about your kid. If you do not allow your child to fail, if you do not let them make mistakes, if you solve all their problems for them and they don't have the armor to go interact in the world, then you've really not done a loving thing for your child. You've created someone who's weak. And so when we interact with this person that has to be the center of the universe in a way that just affirms that, all we're doing is condoning it, and it's codependent behavior on our part. And so that, depending on how hard a time we have with that, it might be worth therapy, Al-Anon, Celebrate Recovery. But we're essentially, with every narcissist, you usually have someone who's codependent. Mm-hmm. And that codependency, it comes from a place of wanting to do the right thing, wanting to love well, and not knowing what that looks like, because that wasn't modeled well for us either. And so we have a label for that, codependency, right? It just means that we all have some growing up to do. And we need to grow up in wisdom, just like Jesus did. But we do so in a way for us, and by the way, before I get into that we have to recognize also that all of us have pieces of our personality that's narcissistic. Mm-hmm. Places where we're wounded and we're selfish and we don't interact well. And so we can look at that and we could go, well, the reason for that is this thing that happened to me. And you go, okay, well, if you got that one space and you're dealing with somebody who's like this all the time, they got hundreds of them. So think about that. And we have to have that compassion and that empathy. But we can't have the compassion that allows us to interact with them so that the arrows bounce off of us, even if we could hit the target, that they're shooting arrows back at us and they hurt. But we can't get to that place without boundaries. And so that means I need to figure out what my values are, and then I need to figure out what my behaviors are that wrap around that. And the place that we start with these women in our Strength and Dignity class is basic stuff like, are you getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night? Most of them say no. Are you eating? Are you exercising? Do you spend time with people weekly? Do you have friends and a life outside of, because a lot of them just wrap their life around this person, and that's not healthy. And so we start there, and they start feeling good about themselves again, rediscovering their relationship with God. And by the way, daily time with the Lord is one of those things that's a basic. And he brings them through to a place where they realize that they are just as precious as this person that they're dealing with. And usually the next stage they go through is compassion for this person. And then they learn some skills into how to interact with that person so that they're not making things worse, and they stop condoning the behaviors. So, for example, a boundary, let's say I'm through all of that process and I understand I'm dealing with someone who's wounded, and I drop a dish and I break it, and this sets the person off, right? They freak out and they start yelling. A boundary for myself would be, I leave the room when someone's verbally aggressive towards me if I feel emotional. So that's a little rule I'd have for myself. And the value I'd be protecting is that marriage is important, that we're to be gentle in our speech and kind. And if I don't have the ability to do that, I'm going to leave the room. And so I would say to the person, I want to talk to you, and I need some time to calm down because what just happened here made me emotional. And then I leave. Boom. Okay, that's how that works. And the person that is standing there having their fit usually will chase you. Sometimes women leave the house, drive away. But the thing is that we have to show up differently. We can't expect this other person to change. And it is as hard for us to show up differently and stronger in those tiny little moments of the day as it is for that person to recognize that they need to let go of some pride and allow a healthy shame response to go, okay, this is something I need to work through. I have an opportunity. And eventually, and I've seen this happen in some of the marriages, the person that's a narcissist will get to a place where they go, you know what? I'm not bad. I do some things that are bad, and that's the difference between shame and guilt. I'm not a bad person. I'm doing some things that God would not approve of. And then that's when you guys can start working together. But until that person has that moment where they're humble, you look through the Proverbs, every one of them that says fool, they're operating in fool. And we do that too. So I'm not judging those people negatively, but Proverbs are very clear about what to think, what to say, what not to do with fools. So we got to be wise there.
It's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking about reframing, how we learn to reframe situations, reframe dialogue, how we kind of move the narrative back from, we almost have the upper hand.
Yeah.
We know that a narcissist doesn't accept blame. We
Right.
know that they don't apologize. We
Yep.
know that they don't, after an argument, they don't revisit. It's done, it's over, I don't want to hear about it ever again. So there's things that we know that should be able to equip us to say, well, wait a second, if I want to have a conversation and I want it to be where we examine a situation together as opposed to me attacking you and blaming you or trying to cause you to feel blame, is there a way I can reframe the presentation that does not cause them to flip the blame switch and say, oh, well, you're just blaming me for that. All right, I'm not responsible for that. I didn't set the plate on the corner. When it's just, first of all, it's just a plate. It's just a plate. Even if it was your grandmother's last plate, it's just a plate.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way for us, and is it the same as, and my logic and reason goes to difficult people in my life, I look at them as, how would I treat them if I knew they had a brain tumor?
Yep.
But they didn't know that they had a brain tumor.
Right, that's it.
And so how will I treat them differently if I happen to have inside information that there's a tumor and it's pressing on this part of their brain and they just cannot respond to me in any other way? But so I'll find a way to be gentle. I'll find a way to be compassionate when in reality they're just mean. They're just a narcissist. Do I have to work that hard? Do I have to rearrange, does that just not yield more authority to the narcissist? Is there a win that can possibly be had in this scenario?
So God's going to determine that one. And here's the thing: we have to stay focused on our own growth, because I don't think there's any better training ground on how to love your enemies than to interact with a narcissist. I mean, you think, and I love Deeper Walk International. They have several books on narcissism, and the way they approach it is your brain's in enemy mode or it's in relational mode, right? So when we're in, and we get in enemy mode too. So, but if this person's living in enemy mode, then they're always defensive, right? And so we can't control them, the work they want to do on themselves, or their own self-respect, or their spiritual growth. So there's two things we need to do. The first one is pray, because the power of prayer is real. Our God calls us to pray for others. We are to love our enemies. We're to pray for them. So we definitely need to pray. And we don't pray that they change. We pray that they fall in love with Jesus because he knows what he wants to do. We're not the source of truth. We're not God. So the first thing is to pray. And the second thing is to lower our expectations for outcomes. So when you go into a situation, and it's hard because you're co-parenting, you're paying bills together, you got all this stuff that you're doing together, and if you were dealing with someone who is rational and emotionally mature, then you wouldn't even be thinking about these things. But in this space, you're not dealing with that. And so what we recommend is that you start with small things and you put boundaries in place and you stand firm. Meaning, if the person decides that, they're not going to come home from work sober, then, you're clear about what the expectations are with that. And for some women, it's, I want us to be in a safe space, and I'm not going to encourage this behavior, and I really want you to get help. And if you don't, then the kids and I are going to have to live somewhere else. And unfortunately, there's consequences that sometimes a narcissist will not even budge or understand until they hit bottom of those consequences. And God, the dark moment of the soul kind of thing, where God really gets a hold of them, where they feel like they're at the end of themselves and don't know what to do. We cannot facilitate that. That is not a goal that we should have, but rather we should be looking at our day-to-day, moment-to-moment, staying in our now, and keeping no list of wrongs. There's no accounting of wrongs. Because of what Jesus did for us, we can't keep that list on somebody else. We're not the source of truth. We're not the judge. And so as hard as that is, that's a growth opportunity for us to forgive and walk forward in truth and love, which means we don't lie and we don't enable. And that's really hard, especially if we're afraid of that person. And a lot of people that live with narcissists are afraid of them. And that's why we start with the self-care and the building up of our relationship with God, so that we're strong enough to take these risks on a daily basis, even though they're small. It's hard, really hard.
The research shows that men are more likely to be narcissists than women. And this is statistical analysis that says that the statistics shows that it's overwhelming distinction between men who are narcissistic versus women. It kind of feeds into the narrative that they already start out with certain innate characteristics and behaviors that, if fed a steady diet, will grow to larger proportion and have larger weight than the compassionate side or the empathetic side, the patient side, the exertion of strength is what narcissism is. I'm exerting power and authority over you to conform. So God says to man, you are to subdue the earth. We then take that and now we subdue everything, and it's got to meet our standards because God said so. So I would not have thought of that only because of my own personal experience. But there's statistics that talk about that even the commercial world of cosmetics and hair care products and appearance drive towards a male because he has to look perfect. He has to feel like people are admiring him. The gentleman's quarterly, the dress for success, all these things. We tend to think that cosmetics and all these other things are driven to the woman consuming population.
Right.
But man's struggle with insecurity is so strong that he's fully circled, he's circumnavigated the spectrum from being strong, bold leader to being self-consumed, self-absorbed. It's all about me. It makes sense, but wasn't my experience, wasn't Jason's experience, but
Right.
I do know a lot of women who have experienced it. So if I tell the narcissistic husband things aren't good, you know, you tell everybody how wonderful things are, but I've got to be honest with you, things just aren't good. I'm not happy in the marriage. Is he going to care?
No, he's going to take that as a personal insult and get defensive and then start justifying everything that he does. But I empty the dishwasher, you know, that's not the right approach. The right approach is to change ourselves and show up differently in how we interact with that. Because otherwise we're expecting somebody else to change. Now, if you're not married to a narcissist, you can have a conversation that looks like, hey, dude, you've been working way too much. I'm not happy here. I miss you. It's been a year since we've done something fun together.
Right.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. When you're interacting with someone who is not, when the relationship is not reciprocal, and it's like that for a long time, and you feel like you have to hide who you are or walk on eggshells, that's unhealthiness. And that's also, we're contributing to that. Not that we're responsible for his behavior at all. Those are choices that he makes. But we have to be in charge of ourselves. We have to ask God, what do you want to grow in me? You know, one of the things that's statistically significant cross-culturally about women is that we show up as higher in agreeableness on the Big Five personality test. And what does that mean? Well, that means that if you're in a room of 100 women, 60% of them are going to be more agreeable, you know, than men. Okay. So when we show up like that, that can look like permission, you know, and we won't say something, but what we don't address, we condone. And so we have to be careful about that. We are not here to shine up somebody else's sin and make it look good. We're here to be iron sharpening iron. And it's hard when you guys are growing at a different rate, you know, and I see this a lot with people whose husbands are pastors or men whose wives are in ministry. There's a disproportionate rate of growth. So you got somebody who's wildly chasing after God, and you got somebody who's like, yeah, I'll show up at church. Okay. Yeah. And so that is really, I think, at the core of the problem. When you have both people chasing after God, that changes everything.
Well, it's certainly something that in this respect, do you dare to respect yourself enough to step out, to get strong, to get emotionally strong, to look at the triggers that are happening within the marriage, what part you play in it, for both male and female, to examine the role and find a place where you two can come to not a consensus, but to a level of communication that's healthy and beneficial and is respectful and honoring to the marriage. And that is the message of Nina Roesner, the Respect Dare, itself, the new book, 12 Truths to Change Your Marriage, a Respect Dare Journey for Wives. And you can find, what's the best place to find you online?
Yeah, so we're on greaterimpact.org. There's free resources there if you want to sign up for those. And you can find us in major booksellers and any place online.
Wonderful. We look forward to seeing you here on the first Monday of next month, and the first Thursday of next month. I'll get my dates right as soon as I can. But thank you so much, and always a joy to be with you.
It was great to be here. Thank you, Rabbi Walker.
Thanks. God bless. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.